That should be good. All right, we'll call to order the Stevensville Town Council meeting for Thursday, July 8th, 2021. Ms. Bertha, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Devlin.
Here.
Councilmember Ludington.
Here.
Mayor Dewey.
Here. If you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, we'll take public comment from citizens on items that are not listed on tonight's agenda. If you'd please step forward and state your name and address for the record, we sure appreciate that. Any public comment? Sure. Yes. That's the one, right?
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Mapelli. I live at 203 St. Mary's Drive. This is Velda.
Push the button on that microphone.
Aha.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Start again. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Mapelli. I live at 203 St. Mary's Drive, and this is Velda. She is 3 weeks shy of her 84th birthday. On a warm day in April, she went out for a walk. She walked 3 to 5 miles every day and was the Energizer Bunny on amphetamines. On this particular day, while she was out for her walk, a vehicle hit her traveling somewhere between 15 and 25 miles an hour. It was never proven exactly how fast he was going. The impact threw her more than 50 feet in the air. She had competing brain hematomas, which means both sides of her brain were swelling against each other, and they had nowhere to expand. She had a broken pelvis. She had 9 broken ribs. She had a broken arm. She had multiple head lacerations, and her head was bleeding profusely when the paramedics arrived on the scene. She had multiple leg and ankle fractures. She was taken off of life support after 18 hours. She was my mother. I wrote an email to the council last week about the issue of pedestrian safety, and I wanted to share Mom's story with you to humanize and also to underscore the importance of improving pedestrian safety within the town of Stevensville, and more specifically on College Street. I live on the corner of 7th and College. Whether I'm inside the house or in the yard, every day I see cars traveling way in excess of the posted 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. As a matter of fact, Michael and I were working in the yard today, and this afternoon, it was as if this green SUV traveling southbound on College saw the digital sign and floored it. And by the time he crossed 7th and College, I don't have a radar gun, but he was zooming, and we yelled at him and it did nothing. So we see this on a daily basis. So I want you to consider this about this issue of pedestrian safety. When you travel north from Middleburg Fork Road onto College, the first stop sign happens roughly 6 blocks up. The next stop sign happens 3rd, and then again at 2nd, and then at the East Side Highway. College Street, as it is now configured, is the faster alternative to taking Main Street. Duh. There's not a whole lot of cars turning into businesses or coming out of businesses, and it makes having to go through the town of Stevensville much quicker. There are no sidewalks on College until you get to 4th Street. And then at 4th Street, they are only on the west side. There are sidewalks on both sides of the street the further north you travel. And without sidewalks on much of College, kids use the street as their playground. We see it every day. They ride their bikes, they're skateboarding, and they're just being kids, enjoying being outside with no place else to play. I don't care if they're going to the park. They gotta be in the street to get to the park. A car traveling even 25 miles an hour, so that's 10 above the posted speed limit on College, travels 36.67 feet per second. As I said, many of the cars traveling down College are way faster than 25 miles an hour. It isn't as if a child will be hit or killed on College. The question is when. By their very design, speed bumps offer the town of Stevensville a self-policing option rather than us incurring the cost of additional patrol officers and units. I believe speed bumps are a cost-effective way of slowing down traffic on College Street. Are they a pain in the you know what? Yes, they are. If you want to drive 30 and bottom out on a speed bump, we'd be happy to have a tow truck tow your car away. They are also a proven speed deterrent. According to the American Journal of Public Health, children are especially susceptible, with automobile collisions responsible for the greatest number of deaths of kids, 5 to 14. Their study found that installing a speed bump is associated with a 53 to 60% reduction in injury or death in neighborhood children who are struck by a vehicle. Because most severe injuries are often related to vehicles exceeding the speed limit, installing a speed bump helps ensure that drivers abide by posted speed limits. I gave the council members some funding options in my email, and I'm not going to go over those again. A fact, vehicle stopping distance improves. In other words, you can stop quicker by 45 feet by only reducing the speed 5 miles an hour. Speed bumps are designed to compel drivers to reduce their speed to 15 to 20, depending on how big we want to make them, to comfortably drive over them. So imagine I'm asking the council and the town to consider the positive impact on child and pedestrian safety you would have if you installed speed bumps on College. Well, I doubt the man who killed my mother got up in the morning and said, you know, I think I'll kill somebody today. But the reality is he did just that. Don't wait to improve pedestrian safety until this happens in our town, please. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other public comment on items not listed on tonight's agenda?
Hi, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Cheryl Olson and I live on 10th Street, which intersects with College. I just want to support everything that Mr. Kelly said because I see that on my corner as well, the speed that those cars are going. And when the city first put out the portable signs that kind of block the crosswalks, I'd come out in the morning and find that somebody had picked them up and thrown them to the side, and I'd be out there in the morning putting those signs back in place. And now I know there's just one sign left out there. I don't know what's become of it. My point is, I know that there's rascals out there that are going to avoid that speed limit, that are going to be throwing those signs to the side. I understand that, but I'm wondering if it is time to do something to help slow down that traffic, knowing those rascals are still going to be there trying to defy the speed limit. And I really appreciate that the sidewalks, the crosswalks, and the speed limit was put in place. And I also just want to take a minute, since I haven't been here for a long time, to thank Paul and Jamie, and welcome you, and certainly the mayor and Janelle for all the work you do. This is a very hard job. I follow your work closely. I know how hard it is, and I really appreciate the work you do. Thank you.
Okay, any further public comment? Items not on tonight's agenda.
Like Tabitha, 509 Mission. I just want to give a big thank you to Ray Smith and to Chief Motley and his family for giving us a wonderful 4th of July. We had kids here from Arizona who'd never seen fireworks that big or that explosive, and they were so in awe of that. They said living in a small town's pretty cool. So anyway, thanks Chief, Vicki. Please extend our thanks to them, to all who helped you. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, is there any final public comment?
All right, very good. We'll move on then. We have approval of the minutes, 2 sets of minutes for council to approve tonight, April 1st and April 6th council meeting minutes.
I would make a motion to approve both sets of minutes in one motion. April 1st and April 2nd.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Ludington and seconded by Ms. Devlin to approve both sets of meeting minutes for April 1st and April 6th. Any council discussion on minutes approval?
They were long, and I really appreciate you all taking all the time to accumulate those minutes. The first April 1st minutes were on 40 some pages. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other council comment? Public comment on minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Mr. Burkett?
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
And Councilmember Ludington.
Okay, you have before you approval of the biweekly claims, claims numbers 16800 and 1 through 16891.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Ludington and seconded by Ms. Devlin to approve claims as they're presented. Questions from the council on claims?
I see Mr. Cruz here. I would like a comment from him on claim 16871, which is Fireball sewer solvent. Is that something we use to break up clogs?
Yeah, it's a degreaser that we put in certain manholes every week.
You use it on a continual basis.
Yes. Sure.
Any further questions from council?
It is.
All right, is there any public comment on the claims? All right, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Okay, thank you. While we're on the subject of claims, I'd like to inquire council's direction on a specific claim that has gained a lot of attention in the community, and that is claim number 16437 to Boone Kahlberg, PC, in the amount of $12,020.20. I think we all know what that claim is for and the discussions that have surrounded it. There's been inquiries if the council is going to be asked to consider that claim, or what that process looks like. I'd like some input or direction from the council to how you'd like, if you'd like to see that claim come to the council, or acknowledge that it didn't come before council in December and move on. Or if you'd like to consider it this evening.
I think for me, there's other claims that haven't come before us from that period as well.
Correct.
I'd like to see those come before us.
Okay.
I think 16437 should be separated and probably discussed at the time that we receive the information back on the investigation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that once we get a report on the investigation, then we'll consider that claim. But I also think that we need to see those claims from December.
I would also agree with that. Focus on the investigation. Like,
With that on the record, we'll proceed as you've asked, and hopefully that'll clarify any questions for citizens. We'll move into administrative reports. The airport report is in your packet this evening from the airport manager, as well as the community development report, specifically in the building department. Those reports are there for you. There's no new activity to report in planning and zoning realm of community development. There's one pending application for annexation, but outside of that, We're just seeing a couple of municipal services exclusion applications, which basically starts the process with DEQ on new infrastructure, specifically for Twin Creeks and Burnt Fork Estates. Those two, phase 2 of Twin Creeks and phase 1 of Burnt Fork Estates are starting those processes of infrastructure. A finance report has been included in your packet for you this evening.
Right, Steve, ask something about the airport.
Sure.
I know a few months ago I brought up, we really have not had representation at the airport. And we have not seen the director nor had him give his own reports ever. Can we get his participation in this a little bit?
It's challenging. He's a part-time employee, and there's scheduling conflicts in the evenings for him. Aside from rearranging meeting schedules, we ask the department heads to provide their written report and do our best there. I'll inquire to see how we can maybe figure out a way to at least get something in person. Yes, Craig. We're in managers' reports right now. We'll under another comment opportunity, Craig. Okay. Do you have any questions on the community development report before we move on to finance? Okay, finance report, and I acknowledge the council probably hasn't seen a written finance report from the finance department in some time now. So I'll just kind of review this because this is new to the council packet, and you probably hadn't had a tremendous opportunity to review it. The utility billing aging report as of 6/30 is shown there. Our total balances, including a current balance, shows that we have 19,339 outstanding. So our collections have come down considerably. You don't see an amount owing as of 5/30/21 because I wasn't able to locate that report offhand when I prepared this report. But when I generated or used this format of a report from previous council meetings some years ago, we saw much higher collections. So Laura's continued to stay on that. And collections trickle up a little bit in the summer just because people are watering more and they fall a bit further behind on their bills. And so we use the fall to kind of help catch them up. So City Court turned over their fines totaling $2,123. The auditors are scheduled to be in town hall in August. We've got a few weeks designated in August that we're trying to narrow down specific dates, but we're looking at August for that field work to be done for the 1920 audit. And we've been working all week to get them the information they need ahead of that field work. And we're pretty well wrapping that up. So we've done a good job there. Just an update on where we sit year end with the fiscal year 2021 budget. That fiscal year ended on June 30, 2021. So these numbers are pretty solid, but mind you, there's going to be bills that are coded back to June that will be, the bulk of bills are here and have been entered. So I broke this down into general fund, other funds kind of combined, and then a total, just because we often put some emphasis on the general fund. You can see there the budgeted numbers as to what we expected to perform in fiscal year 2021, and then the actuals there. The notation I'll make is yes, the general fund is over budget by $106,000, and that's largely attributed to COVID. So if you took out just the COVID-19 supplies and services that we didn't anticipate having to pay for in fiscal year 21, that adds up to the $136,950. When you put that back into that 106, obviously that brings us back into a surplus rather than a deficit. So that's just kind of a caveat to the chart I threw up there that you should keep mindful. The other thing that those numbers include that I can't separate out is any wages and salaries that were paid strictly with COVID-19 money or CARES money, because those are coded to salaries and wages, and I have to drill down really deep into individual employment payrolls to figure out what those dollars were. So they're lumped in with the rest of the employees. But the bottom line there is that when you take out those COVID-19 supplies, we do see a surplus in the general fund, obviously with the CARES funding that we received from the federal government over the year. So altogether, the budget's underspent with all funds combined by just over $730,000. So there's that information for you. The other brag we want to give tonight, and Bobby will touch on some of this, I think, in his report in terms of the pool's performance, but the swimming pool did amazing this fiscal year in terms of closing the gap that pool costs and the taxpayers of the community. So you can see in previous years, dating back to fiscal year 14-15, the pool lost anywhere between $11,000 and $25,000 in that range each year. Mr. Sunstein's been able to bring that down to $4,300. Of course, there's going to be maybe one or two more bills that come in for the swimming pool for June, but the fact that that number is under 10,000 is remarkable. And so kudos to him for that sound financial management of that asset. Certainly, the $4,300 deficit is backfilled with taxes. But the good news is that that's all it costs to taxpayers. It nearly ran itself this year. And that's just operations. The big caveat to that is that doesn't include any capital expenses or any money we put in capitalized to the swimming pool. Obviously that's not covered, but we would just want to bring that to your attention. And then of course you've heard before, preliminary budget, we're pulling that together and we'll be prepared to present that to you folks in early August once we get your fourth council member installed and get some availability. So we're rocking and rolling on that. We feel a lot more confident in where our starting position is now that we've had some time to reconcile some financials. So, any questions on that report?
Yeah, if you'll go back to number 4, the budget update, on your revenue expenses, to the right there, you've got arrows.
Oh,
Is
yes.
that up? Is that over previous year or?
So that's over. So if you see like actual revenue with the up arrow, that means that we received more than we anticipated. Actual expenses were higher than we budgeted. And so that's what those arrows mean, just to kind of delineate, just because of the way this was formatted, I wanted to demonstrate that those numbers were higher. So if you look at actual expenses across all funds, that low arrow points down, and that's because we underspent what we thought we would.
This includes the money that we received from the CARES Act.
Correct. It includes CARES Act funds. It does not include ARPA funds.
Okay.
So ARPA is the second set of money they just released. It does include ARPA funds.
Okay.
It does include 200 in the revenue side across all funds. It does. You're right.
Okay.
So CARES and ARPA. The first half of ARPA came on 30th of June. They were super cool about that. They tried to push it past July 1st, but because the federal government said you must deliver this money within 30 days of receiving it, the state had to send it to us before June 30. So we got it right on time. And so yes, there's $200,000 of revenue in there from ARPA, and then obviously all of the CARES.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any further questions from council? All right. We'll move on then to the fire department report, and we'll turn it over to Chief Molly.
So the report is in the packet. I'm sure you guys had a chance to look at it. As of the end of June, we're at 370 requests. As of this afternoon, we're at 397 requests. So in the last 8 days, we had 27 requests for service. So it's that time of the year when things get actually busy and crazy. So anyway, that's what's going on there. You'll see that we had 68 requests in the month of June, 49 within the district. We had medical were 52, out of those 68 were medicals, 14 fires and 2 motor vehicle crashes. And then we had some mutual aids, we had 5 of those. So that's where bumps those numbers up and around. New medical responses year to date as of end of June again was 293 versus 54 fires and 23 crashes. So the out ordinary medical leads the charge by a large margin. We're doing fine that way. Other than that, up until the end of June, things are pretty calm. We had a little excitement last night, which you guys were aware of. I may or may not know. So we'll go through that. We'll roll and see what happens there. So as the insurance company gets involved, we go down that path. But thankfully, nobody was injured. Could have been way bad, but it wasn't. So just go with that forward. So other than that, it is fire season. It's gonna get exciting. It's crunchy out there. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think we're prepared. We're ready to go. Last night's loss. A little mind on a few things, but we'll go from there. So, any questions?
I guess that was my only question, Chief, is Jennifer aligned in your response time with the loss of a vehicle?
Well, we lost a Type 6, which is going to be a wildlife engine. So, as we get into wildlife season, it puts us down an engine. So, yeah, we're going to be a little bit tighter, but then the district picked up another engine over this last year, so it kind of helps out that way. So we should be okay. We'll be able to get through. Hopefully, we'll get this one done. We lost back up and show over. We'll be fine.
I'm glad to hear nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the fire chief from council? Great, thank you. Okay, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Sunstein.
I'll just touch on a few of the main things out of this report here. We've had a decent amount of vandalism at Lewis and Clark Park early June. Mac and I worked together and we mitigated that a lot. We fixed a lot of things that were broken. We chained all the picnic tables down in the pavilions because a lot of skateboarders were moving those into the skate park, causing hazards as well as destruction to our property. River Park, watering the trees, and we got the long grass mowed this last week, so that's really nice. Father River Valley, we got lucky. We found the play structure on Facebook Marketplace. Saved us like $3,000 on our budget, so we have that. We have a meeting next week to kind of get a direction picked out, set some dates, make a timeline. I'm working on the site evaluation currently. Once we get that, we'll be rocking and rolling. As Brandon touched on, the pool is doing great. Very busy, hot summer, makes sense. We're sold out for the season for swimming lessons. We had one private party rental before I wrote this report. We had 6 scheduled. We now have 12 scheduled as of today. Yeah, it's busy. We've hit max capacity 3 times at open swim. That's 75 people in the water. So that's, the pool is packed when that's happening. I will say, kind of the rough side of it is my guards are maxed out because we are short staffed. So I just ask the community to be understanding of that. We're doing everything we can, staying open as long as we can. But the pool's doing really well. And then some other things. The park board is really interested in updating Creamery Garden Park. With the budget talks coming up, we're looking at getting new picnic tables and maybe some kind of Easter lighting type stuff in there just to light that space, give it a little facelift, and promote people who don't want to have lunch there and stuff, and make it a little bit updated. That's just a concern that they have, so we're working through that. And then pavilion rentals, we had 2 in the month of May, or in the month of June. We have 6 scheduled for July at this time.
Any questions? Great, thanks, Bobby. All right, police department report. Chief Sos is here to present tonight.
Good evening. I changed up the report a little bit and separated some of the items. You'll see on the bottom, I've included vacation checks, extra patrols. Those numbers are not included in the overall calls for service. Those are basically provided so you could have an idea of how active the officers are in the areas of town. If you look at those numbers and compare this month to last month, I think we've had a significant reduction in the calls for service overall. I'm hoping that the visibility that the officers are having out there is a direct result of that. We'll see what happens next month. The only other item that I have to add is on Tuesday, I was involved in a felony arrest, and I think it's commendable to the citizens of the town, the way they were involved in the actual arrest. The individual fled on foot from the location, and I had a number of residents pointing and shouting, he's going in that direction. So that was pretty awesome to see the community get involved with it. That's all I have.
Any questions for Police Chief?
I just wanted to say thank you for being transparent about those vacation checks. It's clear that people are using them. So I think that was a direct result of you explaining that as you walked around town and saying you know, people like to do that.
Thanks, Chief. All right, Public Works Department, we have Mr. Cruz here to present.
Good evening. June was a busy month for us. I'm not going to bore down into the details. Biggest thing is water consumption jumped dramatically for obvious reasons. Irrigation system quite a bit. Our wastewater facility continues to meet permit due to the hard work of Public Works crew. Proud of them. We got a lot of things done. We work closely with Parks and Rec, both to put on great events and deal with the aftermath of not so great events. We completed our fire hydrant testing, inspections, and flow testing for the year in the month of June. And they've been being used almost every day. So they're in good shape. We completed the 5th and Park sidewalk and paving project. I don't know if anyone's been glad to see that. Looks great. It does look great. They still have a few punch list items to get to, which I remind them of. We lost the irrigation pump at Riverside. We rebuilt that pump, rebuilt the priming pump, made some changes to the way we pick up water, and I had initially put $4,800 in for a new pump in the draft budget. We took that out, so hopefully we save town some money. It's been a draft budget. Had a pretty good leak at the reservoir. Actually, the mayor found it. We fixed it. Installed the most controversial flagpole ever at the town hall. And quite a bit of calls, daily calls for down power lines, locates, a lot of construction going on. That requires us to go out and locate our utilities, make sure there are no problems. So it was a busy month and it was hot.
Steve, could you speak to, we've discussed a lot of other communities are having challenges and implementing a lot of water restrictions because they're having a hard time keeping up with the water demand and the heat. Can you speak to Stevensville's position and how we've done?
Yeah, so far, as of this morning, we are in good shape. I've spoken at length with my predecessors about when I should start getting nervous and whether we should start thinking about conserving water. We're in a good spot. Pump a lot of water, early morning hours. Our reservoir is sustaining a good level. It's dipping down a little bit, but nowhere near the get concerned.
Thank you.
So I feel good about that from my knowledge.
Any questions from council?
I just have a comment. Steve and Bobby, I appreciate both your help with Western Heritage Day. I know that was a little complex and took some time out of your day, but I really appreciate your efforts.
It was great. Appreciate it. I was a judge. Chuck later.
We also have candles all over the place.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. All right, the town council doesn't have any guests to recognize on their agenda this evening. You have one item of correspondence, and that is a letter from Stephanie Mapelli regarding pedestrian and traffic safety in college. And she's addressed that with you this evening, and you have a copy of that in your packet. We don't have any public hearings or unfinished business to discuss, so we'll move right into new business. You have discussion decision to nominate an elected council member to serve as council president in accordance with town council rules R12. I can introduce the item if you'd like me to. It's somewhat self-explanatory. Your council president resigned. Given that you're a council of 3 now, and there's somewhat of a time lapse between now and when you perhaps appoint a 4th council member, we would like to see council president in place. We hear a lot of concerns about a single signature on a check, et cetera, et cetera. So having some redundancy in the organization would sure be helpful. So that's why it's on the agenda this evening.
Would it be appropriate? I feel it would be appropriate to have, I don't know if we call it a fill-in, until we have a full council, and then we can solidify a permanent council president at that time. I don't know what your feelings are about that.
You can pick a new one every week, as far as the mayor's office is concerned, just as long as we have someone to point to.
That's exhausting.
That's a lot of signature cards. I don't have a problem with that if we want to revisit it after we have a full council.
I agree. I think an interim president might be a good idea. And then reconsider when we have a full council.
Okay, so you've all agreed an interim fill-in would be ideal. Who's going to do it?
Oh. Got it.
Motion or nomination?
I nominate Paul.
I second that nomination.
All right, it's been, Ms. Devlin is nominated with the second of Ms. Allen, Paul Ludington as the interim council president. Council discussion? I'm not going to give you a chance to say no. Public comment? All right, given that, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Berthoud?
Councilmember Allen,
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Abstain.
Motion passes. 2 ayes and 1 abstention. Okay, next item on your agenda is a special event and alcohol use permit for the Stevensville class of 2011's reunion held in Lewis Clark Park. The primary reason this event permit is coming before council is because of the alcohol use. The number of attendees doesn't necessarily trigger a council review, but the alcohol permit does.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved by Ms. Devlin, second by Ms. Allen to approve the alcohol, or to approve special event alcohol use permit for class of 2011. Any council discussion?
Yeah, I think we all remember our 10-year high school reunion. I don't have a problem with this.
Okay, any other council comments? My 10-year reunion wasn't that long ago, so.
Not even.
Okay, no council comments. Is there any public comment? All right, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Berthoud?
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Next up is discussion decision on Morrison Merrily Task Order number 4 for a new automatic vertical pivot gate at the Stevensville Municipal Airport. Mr. Reed is here to present the item and answer any questions the council has regarding the task order.
All right. Well, I'm Tyler Reed. I'm with Morrison Merrily, and I'm here to present our latest task order for engineering services for fence modifications and a new automatic vertical pivot gate at the entrance of the airport.
So the purpose of of this project is to increase the safety at the airport. Some of you may have heard about the incident back in January where an airplane ran into a deer on the runway. Luckily, the pilot was okay. The plane took some serious damage. And so as a result, the FAA has made this gate project their number one priority as far as funding goes, just for a safety side of things. And so, yes, there is a cattle guard at the entrance. However, the deer are smart enough to actually tiptoe across the cattle guard. And so we are constantly seeing deer here and there, try to haze the deer out, but ultimately there tends to be some that are hanging around. So, so normally the FAA, so this is an FAA funded project. For a normal year, they would cover 90% of the project, and then the airport comes up with another 10% match. However, this year they're actually funding projects like this at 100%. And so this project would not require any out-of-pocket expenses for the airport. It would just be covered by the FAA. So this task order includes grant administration. We are doing some utility coordination, both for the gate and then also planning for future hangar development near the gate. And so I'm kind of trying to look ahead on that. Design, bidding services, construction management, and closeout services. And so that's the project in a nutshell.
Council? So I assume that this is going to be a keypad entry.
That's correct.
And then a time limit before the gate that goes down on its own.
Correct. And it's also going to have a receiver for remotes. So especially for people like, Dusty, who has or Mark, who has a operation there where they go up there every day. They'll have they can get a garage door remote and just hit the button so they don't have to type next to that every time.
And we're going to do that for emergency services as well.
Yeah, so there is what's called SOS. And so there's a sensor, and I can't remember if it's from the siren or from the flash rate, but it automatically opens the gate. So if there is an emergency at the airport gate, they don't have to type in it.
We couldn't afford a $30,000 microphone.
That's okay.
Just a gate.
Yeah.
I may have probably missed it. Is there a timeline?
As soon as possible. I'd like to get construction going in August if possible. And the only hangup potentially would be just the lead time on the gate itself, just because there's lead time on everything. And so at a minimum, we'd like to get everything set up, the power ran to the gate location, the concrete pads, everything, the fence modifications, and have it ready for the gate. So all they have to do is show up at the gate, just plug it right there, plug it in.
Any further questions from council?
I'll make a motion to approve task order number 4 for a new automatic vertical pivot gate.
I'm gonna ask a question really
Yeah.
quick. Is it on the timer? So once it's up, is it up for a certain amount of time, or is somebody responsible for closing it every time?
No, it automatically closes itself. And then, so there's these, what's called loops. And so it senses that there's a vehicle there. And there's a loop going in. The only reason why there's a loop there is just in case, say you're driving through and then you stall halfway through, it knows there's still a vehicle there, so it's not gonna come down on you. But then, yeah, I forget what it is, like 10, 15 seconds. It stays up and then it closes back down. And then when you're leaving,
it'll just open up for you.
Is there a second to Mr. Ludington's motion to approve task order 4?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Ludington, seconded by Ms. Allen to approve task order 4 for a new automatic vertical pivot gate at the airport. Any further council discussion?
Mr. Thomas had a comment from Ms. Evans asking about the airport manager that I'd like to address before we take a vote on this task order, just because I think it's a good time now.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, do you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Schmid has been working quite hard on this and many other things. It's not where you can actually see him. He asked if I could step in today. He's en route from the job. He's hung up in traffic, poles. It's just a bunch of construction and those kind of things. He has completed fixing the AWAS, which we've had problems with as long as I can remember, like 15 years. And he's finally actually got it working. This is the first time that has really functioned. Okay, he and the volunteer Lorenzen have worked on that, right? And then he's worked diligently trying to get the office set up there and several other things. He's also worked extensively with Choice Aviation, which has been here from Hamilton. Okay, this takes a lot of time in the evenings. He's made trips down there with me and a bunch of other things. So you do not see him, but for the 16 hours a week, he's passed that by a significant amount. Okay, he has completed his out-of-town business, which was in Minnesota. That is sealed up and done. So then he will be available to be here more often since he's in state instead of out of state traveling, and everything. This COVID thing and all the construction costs has really been his business into a massive effort to accomplish things that would have been pretty common. So in defense of him. See, the other thing, the mowing is complete for the LUA. We are, with the United States Forest Service, about one fire out, having a fire team. Here, it will probably be at Stevensville. There's a fire at Rock Creek. There's several. Bitterroot, as you noticed, it was pretty smoky this morning. When I come out of the cellway, it was limited visibility. So stuff is exceedingly dry. So he's taking care of that. He's done all the coordination with those folks. That takes many hours. He's made many changes there, which you never will see or haven't saw any of those things. So in the defense of him, that was one. So, and this gate thing, we worked extensively with the mayor and Morrison Merrily back and forth. It's been a very large consideration. We were exceedingly fortunate that both the pilot and the passenger were not injured. Portions of the deer were going 130 steps from the propeller, and it was grotesque. We were very fortunate.
Just to clarify, I'm not questioning that he's not doing a good job or that he's not, performing the hours. It was stemming from, we haven't had council representation or anything. So it's just nice to have that follow-up or a face or, that's all it is saying. So
Well,
just to
absolutely.
clarify.
And then I personally normally would step in as the council chairman, as airport chairman. But with the COVID and those other things, and I'm an elderly person, I have avoided meetings specifically when I really didn't have anything to say. And Brandon has been basically filling in all of the stuff. So he knows, he's right up to speed with every single thing that happens. Phil, in defense of the jump.
Thanks, Greg.
Yes.
Is there any public comment from the audience tonight on approving task order 4 for the gate?
Beg 509 Mission Street. I totally agree that they need it, but just make sure it's a quality gate, because a lot of these automatic gate openers, there's maintenance problems. We see it down in Arizona all the time. So just make sure it's a quality one. Yeah. Don't get cheap on it.
Got that, Tyler? Good man. Any further public comment on the airport gate? All right, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and call for the vote from the council. Ms. Bertha, go ahead.
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
And Councilmember Ludington.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next on your agenda is discussion decision, consent to the mayor's appointment of Wendy Planter as Director of Finance and Human Resources. Get the screen caught up here for everybody. Ms. Planter was not able to join us due to a previously scheduled conflict, given the timing and everything. I got this in front of you. She just wasn't able to fit tonight's meeting into her routine. However, the agenda items before you this evening, Ms. Planty comes back to Stevensville. She was a 1998, I believe, graduate of Stevensville High School. Comes back to us from Denali Borough, seated in Healy, Alaska, where she serves in a very similar position for an organization of very similar size to Stevensville. In some respects, Stevensville has a bit more complex of an organization. In other respects, we're not as complex. But she, when she describes her position, it's very similar to that of what we expect here at the town of Stevensville. So she, I believe, will be a natural fit for the position. The difference here is that this is a position that has regularly incurred abnormal hours and sometimes incurs a significant amount of overtime just because of scheduling and those sorts of things. Gone ahead and salaried this position. It is a position eligible for that, and so we've kind of given some protection to the town, but also given some flexibility to that employee. So the salary would be $54,600. And Wendy's agreed to start July 19th. She'll work for about a week. And then she does have to go back to Alaska. Her house is packed up, but the moving company could not get to her until the week following the 19th. So she'll be here for a week, get things oriented, and then she'll go get her belongings and come back and start that following week on a more regular basis. So administration and I are excited to welcome Wendy, and we're just hoping you'll consent.
Is that salary position exempt or not exempt?
It is exempt.
I'll move to consent to the mayor's appointment of Wendy Planty to Director of Finance and Human Resources.
Is there a second?
A second. Can you confirm that wage though? The salary, please.
$54,600 annually. Did you second?
I did.
Okay. It's been moved by Mr. Ludington, seconded by Ms. Devlin to consent to the mayor's appointment of Wendy Planty as Director of Finance and Human Resources. Any further council discussion?
Just a clarification, because I'm not quite sure.
Vicky Motley, 318 9th Street. It says 54,600 for the exempt position.
That makes it sound.
Oh, okay. All right.
No,
Okay.
No overtime.
All right. Thank you. And then can I ask what her maiden name was?
Wander?
I
I don't remember.
All right. I just thought,
I'm sure you.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think there's some, you brought up the valid point. There are a lot of questions when we talk about exempt or non-exempt. So a non-exempt salary position is eligible for overtime. They don't meet certain criteria. If you meet the certain criteria, hours, wages, responsibilities, you can be exempt, meaning you do not get overtime. That's the position we're seeing.
We've worked over the last several months on moving a lot of our department heads to more of a salary position to limit the organization's use of overtime. Okay, with that, no further public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Allen.
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin.
Aye.
And Councilmember Ludington.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next item is discussion decision on American Rescue Plan Act Water and Sewer Infrastructure Grant application. This is a carryover from your decision at the last meeting to go ahead and pursue this grant based on a proposal or presentation by HDR Engineering. As we kind of state in the agenda communication, kind of some background for how we got to this place. The grant application itself is not in your packet. We did include the funding package, the project budget, the project schedule, which are much actually meatier than the application. The application is an online application, which is why it's not in your packet because there's no way to print it. But it's a very, very simple application. In fact, I'm surprised at how simple it is based on the amount of funding you can request from this application. Usually these types of grants are very in-depth, and this isn't that much so, strictly because I think the state was in a hurry to go ahead and get these funds out. And they had a very short turnaround to start disbursements. So altogether, you're looking at a project cost of $2.5 million. We contribute 1.264 million of that project cost in match funding, $1 million of which would come from the water fund, and 264,000 of that would come from your treasury funds, which we mentioned earlier in the finance report. So we've received that 264 already. That's the first half of the treasury money that they allocate to municipal governments. The other half will come in a year. In this proposal, or in this budget, we're proposing that you budget half of those funds for this project. Now would be the time to adjust that if you want to, but we wanted to leave the other half of the funding for other purposes that aren't eligible for these other grant funds. We have some other general fund items that may utilize those funds, and we didn't want to tie up the entire thing just for this project alone. So weigh that. There is about $100,000 of wiggle room in the local contribution in the water fund. That is cash that the town of Stevensville has set aside in its water rates purposefully for this purpose. So that's how we're able to pull this off in the way we have. In doing so, we won't be forced to raise water rates for this project, and we won't be forced to take any debt for this project either. So you'll have a $2.5 million project for reservoir and leak repairs, and the customer won't notice any effect necessarily on it financially.
Does this tie in at all to, we had a gentleman come speak to us, I think last fall, maybe early spring?
Regarding bond refinancing?
Yes.
Not really. The bond financing, I'm waiting to hear back from him. It's back in bond briefing. They were waiting on us to get them some information. We provided that. We're waiting now, the ball's back in their court. The bond refinancing will result in a savings to the town. And when that comes through, I don't know where we'll be in this project. So I guess in theory, yes, the bond refinancing could help you contribute towards the match, which then allow you to repurpose other funds in the water fund. So yes, I guess if we saw a significant savings in a bond refinance, then you could up the project cost and replace more water pipe. In theory, I mean, that's an option that exists.
Or lower our water rates?
You will never be able to lower your water rates. We had that conversation a couple of years ago, I think, when Mr. Gibson was on the council. Your bond conditions prohibit you from reducing your water rates. But you can do everything in your power to prevent us from having to raise them. But there are requirements that we're pledging revenue from the system to pay those debts. And when you reduce rates, the bondholders get very concerned that you won't be able to meet your debt if you reduce your rates. So that's why that doesn't happen. And you have to have their consent to do so. And the last time we talked to USDA and said, hey, let's lower our rates, they said, you're crazy, no. but they're not going up. They haven't gone up since, what, 2019?
Can you kind of clarify this ARPA money? How much did we get total? Because it was used to kind of balance out when we talked about the finance report earlier, correct?
So there's CARES, which was the first round of funding that came from the federal government from the coronavirus response. And that was primarily under the Trump administration. And then we had ARPA, which comes out of the Biden administration. So CARES reimbursed us for a plethora of expenses related to COVID-19. In fact, for nearly 9 months, they covered wages for our police officers and public safety personnel. That is some of the expenses that I referenced in the finance report. We actually haven't touched any of the ARPA money. So there's 3 buckets of ARPA money. There's what we call treasury money, which is the $530,000. 264 is half of that. Okay, so you get first payment now, and then you get a second payment a year from now. Okay. So that's money that was committed straight to the town of Stevensville by the federal government. Then there's the second bucket, which is called the minimum allocation funds. And that's being allocated, I think, based on a similar formula that they use for gas tax. That is money that they're setting aside for the town of Stevensville, but we have to apply for it with an eligible project. So that's where you see the 327,805 on that budget. The fourth bucket then is the local recovery, or excuse me, the competitive grant process through the state of Montana, which is ARPA funding as well. And that's a grant process you have to apply for, and they score your project, and if that score win. And there's you can apply for $25 million, and there's something like $250 million in that fund for the state of Montana. So those are the 3 buckets of ARPA money, none of which have we utilized yet. That's part of this application process. Does that help? Okay. And it's rapidly evolving. Like, there's a webinar every 3 days from the National League on new guidance that treasurers released. It's overwhelming.
I will move to approve the town of Stevensville's American Rescue Plan Act Water and Sewer Infrastructure Grant application.
It's our second.
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Ludington and seconded by Mr. Allen to approve the town of Stevensville's American Rescue Plan Act Water and Sewer Infrastructure Grant application. Any comments? Ms. Devlin.
Let me run through this again. So, I'm sorry,
No,
but
that's fine.
so ARPA money.
Yep.
$264,000. We already have $1 million in our water fund.
Correct.
So in essence, we don't have to come up with any money. We can fund this project without having to raise anybody's rates, without having to collect any more taxes, without having to jeopardize anybody's anything.
Correct.
Okay,
And it does include replacing some water line.
right.
Yeah. Storage and water needs.
So this $1 million, this is what this was collected originally for.
Correct. It was for the final phase of the project.
I know this is another question that is coming up. When we look into our growth and needing to add to our water supply, wells, storage tanks, how does this affect that? Are builders still going to be responsible for paying into that, or is this going to take care of all of that, or who's holding that portion of the bag? People that are already in need of this service, or people that are going to be getting it?
I think the intent of the proposed project was that the critical need with when the preliminary engineering report was compiled, the critical need was storage. And secondary to that was leakage. And the storage was because we don't have enough emergency storage set aside to meet the 3,500 gallon net fire flows. in addition, our tank is very old, it's 60 years old, and needs to be either rehabbed or replaced. The capacity needs to be increased regardless. Our well system, however, based on growth projections that they utilize, carries us easily into 2040. And in some places beyond. So we have plenty of capacity in the water we're pumping out of the ground. It's a concern as to where we store that water. And then the water we're leaking into the ground. In fact, we arguably need less capacity, and we would put less wear and tear on the current well field infrastructure if we wouldn't lose 75% of the water we were pumping into the ground. So there's a motivator there. The council could reassess, I think, financially and say, okay, this project's done. What does the next thing look like for the town of Stevensville's water system? And what is it going to take to fund that? Does that mean you adjust your infrastructure fees that the builders are paying when they build a new home? That might be the case.
Okay, we already approved for States. We already said they have to pay a portion. If we already take care of all that, where's that money gonna go?
They're going to pay a portion already through their infrastructure fees.
But that's right, but that is not included in this. So is that money going into
It's
here?
going for the next thing.
Okay, so we're gonna not just.
I mean, Creekside phases 1 and 2 and Twin Creeks phase 1 is helping pay for this project essentially and paid for the 2013 project. And so, you know, when Bird Fork Estates is built out and all of those infrastructure fees are paid, those infrastructure fees will pay for the 2050 project.
Right, I just.
You want to verbalize that.
Correct.
That's a good question. Any further questions from council? Are you okay, I mean, in consensus with designating half of the treasury funding towards the project?
Yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted to adjust it down or up, so.
Sorry.
I don't know.
You better. So we can say we want to put this amount forth. We go through the process. Can we lower it at a later time?
Sure. Yes, you can obligate that funding to the grant match, and then down the road, if you receive the grant and you adjust the project budget down and you end up wanting to return some grant funding, you could do that or not, whatever works. So you could also, you know, you may have an opportunity to reevaluate it financially. Say we have a windfall for some other reason in the water fund, then you could turn those funds into the project and increase the project size by increasing the number of or length of water line that we replace. So, and once you approve this grant application and we assume that hopefully it's approved, then we'll get into nuts and bolts with HDR here in these meetings regarding exactly what does the project look like from a design standpoint. You know, is there a second water tower and do we rehab the first? Is there, or the second water tank? Is there just a brand new water tank someplace? What does all that look like? Do we put all of our water down one straw or not? So those intricate pieces of the project we'll address once the grant is awarded and the HDR works out design. You're welcome. Right now we're just trying to make sure the piggy bank's ready. Further council comments? Okay. Good. Your wheels are turning.
Yeah, so I'm reading like this allocation grant requires the lesser of. We chose to do one, match 1-to-1 to be more competitive, correct?
Correct. To get the maximum points out of the competitive grant, and because we were able to. Public comment.
Thank you, Motley. I think it's a great project. I think we're silly not to do it because we need it. And we don't have the funding to do it. So, wonderful.
Any further public comment? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote from council. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Allen,
Aye.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
and Councilmember Ludington.
All right, that motion passes unanimously. And you'll have that submitted by the 15th. Should have included that. The deadline for that was July 15th. We'll have that wrapped up and submitted over to HDR. Okay, that wraps up the business portion of tonight's agenda. We'll go into the executive report. Tying in with the conversation we just had, we talked a little bit about our bonds and debt service there. And forgive me, I don't think I've reported this to council yet. I think I've mentioned it to maybe one council member or two. The USDA comes and does a review of the systems, water and sewer systems, or any system that has debt. Every 6 years, I think is what they told us. And so we have not had a review since our bonds have been awarded. They do, it's like 6 years from a certain date, and that hadn't happened. It was the first time it ever happened to us. They show up kind of somewhat unannounced and just said, hey, we'd like to look at some stuff. One of the questions that they asked was, what do you plan to do with your ARPA funding? And what kind of project do you guys look at doing? And we said, well, this is what we plan. And it was actually, I think, the day after the council approved going forward with PER. And what was interesting is they came back and we told them, and they said, okay, and they said, how much do you think you'll need to borrow then to make all that happen? And Janelle and I said, oh, well, no, we don't plan to borrow any money. And they were very pleased to hear that. They were very excited. They have great review of the town of Stevensville in terms of the work that's happened over the different administrations to rebuild credibility with the USDA. If you recall, before the big projects with water metering and things, the USDA wasn't going to give the town a dime or even loan it to us. And Mayor Minmack did a lot of work to repair that relationship. And I'm proud in this administration that we've been able to maintain that relationship with USDA, and they're very happy with where we sit. They toured the infrastructure physically. Of course, they review and do some interviews and stuff. But then they toured the infrastructure physically, and they were very impressed with how well maintained our systems are. They thought that our grant application for the water reservoir was a tremendous opportunity, and they thought we were in good shape for that. And that's the leak that Mr. Cruz referred to at the reservoir. That's how we found it. Was we were showing them where valves and stuff were. We opened a lid and there was a leak in a hole. So we put the lid back down and said, we'll fix that. But they were very pleased with the system, and then we could see, that we were well invested, and we're happy with where we sat financially in that regard. So the organization can be proud of that review. So another piece. Oh, the only critique they had, kind of comical. They do an ADA review of your primary public facility when they come, because it's the federal government, they have to do that. And we have some challenges at Town Hall with ADA access that aren't a secret to anyone. They noted the changes we had made when they first awarded the bonds, and Gene and that administration had done a bunch of work to Town Hall. We lowered the men's and women's bathroom signs, and you can still see where we have it painted around them and that sort of thing. So they were pleased to see that we had made some changes, but would still like to see us do a little bit more. But they also understand that our facility is what it is. Conveniently, USDA does loans on new city halls. So that came up when we sent them down the road. In other news, the administration has kind of embarked in an aggressive long grass enforcement piece, working hand in hand with the police department and other departments, including public works. And we've actually seen really good success. We were talking in our staff meeting this morning about the success we've seen with some enforcement measures we've taken. There's been at least just one residence that I know of that we've had to mow, and that was because the owner is deceased and it's sitting in a reverse mortgage limbo. So we had to just mow that. We'll stick it on the tax bill. But the other ones mowed before we had to take any adverse action against those property owners to get something done. There are a couple of tribal properties, which I'm sure the community is familiar with. We're going to address those separately in some staff meetings and see if we can't buckle down on some of those as well and get those cleaned up. But all in all, we feel a little bit better about the fire safety and fire preparedness within the community while we're not in the urban interface necessarily of the forest. We hate to see, a block burned down because we could have mowed somebody's, or make sure somebody's lawn grass was taken care of or some debris wasn't left out. So positive news in that, and we'll continue those efforts throughout the summer and into the fall. Lastly, I'll mention progress on the My Sidewalk Performance Dashboard initiative that we launched. We are at the tail end of turning over all of our data to My Sidewalk. We went back, in some cases, as far back as 2017, and provided data sets to them with metrics. We're receiving the last of that data over the next couple of days, but they're getting started on the data we've already turned in so that we can start seeing some movement on a web page, which would be really exciting. So saw some interesting trends just entering numbers into a spreadsheet. It's kind of interesting just to see how things change over the years. So that is coming hopefully sooner rather than later. We're working through that, but I would anticipate September 1st, we'll probably have a really solid product to be able to launch to the public. I hope, I don't know. So any questions from council for the executive report? I didn't address or weren't addressed in the administrative reports. Okay, town council comments.
One of the things I thought of when we were talking about this ARPA funding was I was at my nephew's wedding in Georgia and met quite a few people from the Chicago area who were all very excited about Montana. Had a significant conversation with the gentleman who lives in a small town, probably the size of Hamilton, 200 miles south of Chicago. And we were talking about comparisons of, housing and that type of stuff. He lives in a 2,000 square foot house with a detached garage and about the same amount of property that I own here in town. He pays $12,000 a year in taxes, property taxes. I pay $2,000. He pays $185 a month in water and sewer, and is limited in the size of grass that he can water. So he had to take some of his lawn out of production and put it in gravel because he couldn't water that much. They don't restrict the amount of watering that you can do. They restrict the amount of lawn that you can have. We think that things are expensive here, but in the grand scheme of things, and plus on top of that, they pay 12.5% sales tax. So, yeah, you have to make 6 figures in order to live in a small town south of Chicago. So, I think that we need to have a little perspective. We're pretty lucky. We've been able to do a considerable amount of work in our water and sewer fund to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing living in this particular area. And part of that problem, and they knew it when they first put in water mains in this town, that they were always coming, and they probably always will be. It's just part of what we have to live with. When I was originally on the council back in 2000, we were pretty aggressive with infrastructure rates and imposing those on people who were moving their properties, because a lot of people were asking for relief from that because I'm only the water and sewer lines are already there. I'm having to pay to put it into my house. Do I have to pay this? But I always tell people, because they think that those are high, I always say, well, I've been paying to upkeep this system since I bought my house. You need to buy into that system because you haven't been doing that. So you have to pay a proportional amount in order to be able to buy into that system because we own it together. It's not like operating government. This is a completely different enterprise fund that has to sustain itself. So you would have to be able to provide this service, and it's not an easy job. It's not. It takes a lot of what town hall does in order to be able to keep infrastructure happening. So I think we're doing a great job.
Ms. Devlin?
I had in mind a completely different council comment tonight than where I'm gonna go, so, you're welcome, everyone. Looking over the budget and what happened 2021, I guess I just want to say I am really proud of that. We increased a lot in our budget workshop last year. We did a lot of things that made a lot of people nervous. We gave raises, we took on a different structure for compensation. You know, and we also did something, Brandon, you brought to the table, something that we'd never done before in that estimating what our revenue was going to be without getting actual numbers from the county. And it was pretty scary. We did that, we had COVID, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. So thank you for that. You know, that I think there was a few people that had a role in that, but good job. Good job. I'm proud to be part of what you did.
Appreciate that very much.
Oh, also, we need volunteers for Cornwall Picnic. If we want our traditions to continue, we need people to step up and help. So please, get a hold of the Civic Club.
Any further council comments?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I'm eager to get started on the budget and to look into that. That was definitely the one area that hasn't, that I have been able to work on previously in my job. So I'm super eager to work on the budget alongside you.
Thank you.
It'll be tons of fun.
It is, it actually is.
If you recall, when we adopted a budget around the 13th of July last year, which was incredible. In fact, I think we beat most, we adopted a budget before the mayor of Missoula had proposed his budget to his council. It was an extremely ambitious goal. There was turmoil going on at the time, even it was contentious time. We still made it happen. We got it done. And when we estimated our revenues, we were within, I think, 7/10 of a mil with tax revenues. We won't have to do that this year because we're already kind of behind. And when I say behind, we won't be past our deadline of adopting a budget that most other local governments have to observe. We are not going to be adopting a budget on December 31st. However, we just aren't as in the same place we were last year, and that's okay. We've had things go on. The fact that we came out as positive as we did overall in light of a pandemic, and add to that we didn't have to use reserves out of the general fund to float operations this year. Obviously CARES helped tremendously with that, and we can credit it all to that, but we did very well in managing ourselves, and we'll have budget amendments that will need to happen, but those are expenditures we couldn't avoid. So thanks for your support and positive feedback. I know the department has to be pleased to hear that as well. Board reports.
Planning and zoning met last week. We spent a little bit of time getting reacquainted since we hadn't had a meeting in person in a year probably. So it's been a while since we met in person. Trying to reemphasize and get energized a committee to help us with subdivision ordinances. It's a development code so that we can try to get that operation running. kind of decided that we're really not going to rewrite growth plan, just kind of updated some things in there that were specific that need to be altered, changed a little bit, but I don't think we need to go to a complete rewrite. Actually, I thought it was fairly relevant to where we are right now. Subdivision regulations is a little bit different issue. That I think we need to pay particular attention to, especially given the position that not only the economy, but the country is in right now. So there's a lot of things that we need to try to look at, and that's going to take some time. The mayor has set an extremely ambitious schedule for us to try to keep up with, so we'll be working to try to keep up with that.
It's like the second time I've heard a planning and zoning board member say the mayor has set an ambitious schedule, and I want everyone to know they consented to the schedule. I just suggested it. That was their schedule. But good job, you guys you're sticking to it. Good work. You do have a meeting scheduled. This just came in. Latest
Okay.
news, the library just told us you can have your meeting here on the 28th for your workshop. So, we'll get that advertised for everybody. Any other board reports? I don't have any boards at the minute. Following your next council appointment, it probably won't be on your 22nd agenda, but agenda following in August, we'll go ahead and put your board appointments on that agenda so that you can solidify. I know Sydney was already serving on the park board and she'll continue to do that for the time being. So she's kind of a quasi council rep for the time being. But the airport board is still without a representative. I don't know if there's a council member who would volunteer to attend their meeting at 5:30 on the 13th of July. If you're interested and have availability, please let me know so that we can let the board know that somebody from the town council will be there, at least just to observe. It is a Tuesday.
I'll try to make
Okay. They would like to, I'm sure they would love to see a council member there. And of course, you wouldn't be a voting member of the board because you haven't been appointed, but you'd at least be there to pay attention. So that would be fantastic. Okay, no other items for the good of the order? We'll adjourn. Thanks for your time this evening. Have a good weekend.